Once a year, without warning and without reason, the town returns. It does not rise from the ground or descend from the sky. It simply appears as if it had always been there, waiting just beyond the edge of perception. One moment the land is empty, a stretch of forgotten road swallowed by fog and silence. The next, a town stands fully formed, its streets aligned, its buildings intact, its windows glowing softly against the dark. There are no signs announcing its arrival, no sirens, no earthquakes, no shift in the weather. Yet witnesses swear that, on a single night each year, the darkness itself seems to rearrange. Lights flicker on where no power lines exist. Chimneys release thin trails of smoke into the cold air. Voices drift through the streets, laughter, arguments, footsteps on stone. Sounds of ordinary life unfolding where no life should be. Maps do not mark this place. Satellites fail to capture it. Officials deny its existence entirely. But stories persist, passed quietly between locals and travelers who happen to be in the wrong place at the right time. They all describe the same details, the same layout, the same old storefronts, the same church bell ringing at an hour no clock can confirm. What makes the town truly unsettling is not how it appears, but how real it feels. The air smells of burning wood and damp earth. Doors are warm to the touch. Food steams on tables visible through uncovered windows. Shadows move behind curtains. This is not a ruin or a ghost town frozen in decay. It is alive, active, and strangely welcoming, as though it expects visitors. And yet, every witness agrees on one thing: no one is ever seen leaving. Those who observe from a distance say the town remains for only a few hours, never more than a single night. By dawn, it is gone. Roads lead nowhere. Buildings vanish without debris. The lights fade, not abruptly but gently, like candles blown out one by one. When the sun rises, there is nothing left but empty land and the lingering sense that something has been erased. Authorities claim these accounts are fabrications, hallucinations fueled by exhaustion or folklore. But the timing is too precise, the descriptions too consistent, and the fear too genuine. Because everyone who has seen the town knows the rule, spoken or unspoken, but universally understood. You may look, you may listen, but if you enter, you do not return. Once a year, the town comes back, and each time it does, it reminds the world of a terrifying possibility, that some places are not lost in space, but in time, and that time does not always let go of what it takes. The first recorded sighting of the town did not come from a scientist, a journalist, or an official report. It came from a farmer who could barely write his own name. In the early spring of 1937, just before midnight, Elias Crowley was returning home after checking his livestock along the northern ridge. The land had been empty for as long as anyone could remember. Flat fields, a single dirt road, and a forest that ended abruptly at a shallow valley. No buildings, no streetlights, no reason to slow down. But that night, Elias stopped. Where the valley should have been dark, a warm glow flickered in the distance. At first, he assumed it was a fire, perhaps campers trespassing on his land. Then he heard it, voices, not shouts or screams, but conversation. Calm, ordinary, unmistakably human. The sound of people talking over one another, laughing, arguing about trivial things. Elias later said the voices reminded him of a town square on a summer evening. He walked closer. What he saw should not have existed. A town stood where the valley had been. Not ruins, not half-formed shapes. A complete town, streets, houses, storefronts, and a church at its center. Lanterns lined the roads, casting steady yellow light. Windows glowed from within. Smoke rose from chimneys in slow, deliberate spirals, as if the air itself were breathing. Elias did not enter the town. He stood at the edge of the road, frozen, watching silhouettes move behind windows. A man leaned against a lamppost, smoking. A woman shook a rug from a second-story balcony. Somewhere deeper inside, a bell rang once. At exactly 1:17 a.m., the lights went out. By morning, the town was gone. No burn marks, no foundations, no disturbed earth, just grass wet with dew and a road that led nowhere. Elias told no one, not at first, but he wasn't the last to see it. Over the decades that followed, sightings emerged with disturbing regularity. Always once a year, always on the same night, always lasting only a few hours. Witnesses came from different backgrounds, different generations, and different parts of the region. They had nothing in common except the timing and the details. A traveling salesman in 1952 reported stopping his car after seeing a full town lit up like Christmas, where his maps showed empty land. He claimed his radio began playing music from no known station, slow, crackling tunes that sounded decades out of date. When he stepped out of the car, the music stopped. The town lights dimmed slightly, as if reacting to his presence. In 1968, two teenagers hiking illegally after dark were questioned by police after they returned home shaken and silent. One of them eventually spoke. He described seeing people walking through streets that weren't there yesterday. He remembered the smell of fresh bread and the sound of a piano playing from an open window. His friend never spoke again about that night. By the 1980s, the pattern was impossible to ignore. The town appeared once every year, on the same date, within a window of less than 5 hours. It always looked the same, and it always felt inhabited. Eyewitnesses consistently described details that should have been impossible to coordinate. Street signs with the same names, written in an unfamiliar but readable script. A central square with a stone well, dry but carefully maintained. Shops stocked with goods visible through glass windows, books, shoes, food. No modern technology beyond basic electricity. No visible cars, radios, or televisions inside the town. And yet electricity clearly existed. Lights worked, lamps glowed, buildings hummed faintly, as if powered by something buried beneath the ground. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect was the people. Every witness described them as normal, too normal. They were not transparent, not decayed, not ghost-like. They moved with purpose, interacted with one another, and followed routines. Some waved at passersby, others ignored them completely. A few witnesses reported making eye contact. None of them ever described fear on the townspeople's faces. In 1994, a group of amateur paranormal researchers set up observation equipment along the outskirts after hearing rumors from locals. They arrived early, hours before the expected appearance. The land was empty. Their cameras recorded nothing but wind moving through grass. At 12:02 a.m., the town appeared on every camera simultaneously. No fade in, no distortion. One frame showed empty land. The next showed streets and buildings fully illuminated. The researchers later described an overwhelming sense of wrongness, not terror, but displacement, as if they were no longer standing in the correct version of reality. Thermal cameras showed heat signatures consistent with human bodies moving through the town. Audio equipment captured footsteps, distant conversation, and something that sounded like singing. But when they attempted to zoom in, the image quality degraded unnaturally, as if the town resisted being examined too closely. At 3:41 a.m., all equipment shut down. Batteries that had been fully charged were found completely drained. Hard drives contained corrupted files, except for a single still image. It showed the edge of the town, and a figure standing just beyond the first streetlight, facing the cameras. The image was time-stamped several minutes after the town had supposedly vanished. Officials dismissed the incident as equipment failure and fabrication. The researchers were warned not to return. Others ignored the warning. A pattern began to emerge among those who watched the town year after year. The town did not simply appear, it behaved. Lights would turn on as observers approached, as if responding to attention. Doors sometimes opened on their own. Once a witness reported seeing a curtain pulled aside, revealing a face watching from inside. Those who stayed too long described subtle physical effects. Watches began to lose time. Phones showed incorrect dates. Digital clocks flickered between hours. One man claimed his beard had grown noticeably overnight after observing the town from a nearby hill. No one could explain it. Yet curiosity grew. Locals whispered about the town like a forbidden secret. Some believed it was cursed ground. Others claimed it was a place trapped between moments, replaying the same night endlessly. A few insisted the town was not appearing at all, that it had always been there, and reality simply forgot to hide it once a year. But the most chilling accounts came from those who got close. Several witnesses described crossing an invisible boundary near the town's edge. The air grew heavier. Sound became muted. The warmth from the streetlights felt unnatural, pressing against the skin rather than radiating outward. Some felt dizzy. Others felt an overwhelming urge to step forward, to enter. One woman described it as being invited without words. She stopped herself just short of the first house. That decision may have saved her life, because by the early 2000s, the sightings took on a darker tone. Not because the town changed, but because people began to notice who was missing. Every few years, someone would vanish on the night of the appearance. A hiker, a drifter, a curious local who went out alone and never came back. Officially, these were unrelated disappearances. But among those who watched the town, the timing was impossible to ignore. Witnesses began counting figures inside the town. Some swore the population was growing. In 2007, a retired schoolteacher named Margaret Hensley documented the town from the same vantage point for 11 consecutive years. She never entered. She never approached closer than the road. She simply watched, wrote notes, and left before dawn. In her final journal entry, she wrote, "I see new faces now, people I do not remember from previous years, and some look like the missing." Margaret died 3 months later of natural causes. Her journals disappeared from her home. Only photocopies remain. Despite increasing fear, the sightings did not stop. Each year, the town returned. Lights on, voices steady, smoke rising, as if nothing was wrong, as if it had always been there. And perhaps the most terrifying detail of all, the one that every witness, without exception, eventually mentioned was this: the town never acknowledged its own disappearance. No signs of panic, no urgency, no preparation. The people inside acted as though tomorrow would come, but tomorrow never did. Because by sunrise, the town would vanish again, leaving behind empty land, unanswered questions, and the growing certainty that whatever existed there was not bound by the same rules as the rest of the world. These were not hallucinations, they were sightings, and they were warnings. Because seeing the town was only the beginning. The real danger lay not in observing it, but in believing that it wanted to be seen. No one remembers who spoke the rule first. There was no written warning, no sign posted at the edge of the road, no voice that rose from the darkness to explain what must never be done. And yet, among those who witnessed the town, the rule emerged as something universally understood, arriving not through instruction, but through instinct. You do not enter the town. At first, this was merely caution, the natural hesitation one feels when confronted with something that should not exist. People stayed back because they were afraid of what they might find, because the ground beneath their feet felt unreliable, because every survival instinct whispered that crossing the boundary would be a mistake. But over time, fear turned into pattern, pattern turned into certainty, and certainty hardened into law. Those who stepped closer never returned. The earliest disappearance linked directly to the town occurred in 1949, though it was not recognized as such until years later. A railway inspector named Thomas Bell was sent to investigate reports of unusual lights near a decommissioned line. He left behind a brief note in his logbook, written at 11:58 p.m. "Lights ahead. Looks like a town where there shouldn't be one. Going to take a closer look." That was the last entry. Bell's body was never found. His equipment was discovered the next morning beside the tracks, neatly arranged. His watch lay on top of his notebook. It had stopped at 12:04 a.m. After that, there were others: a hunter in 1961, a surveyor in 1974, a pair of amateur photographers in 1989. Each vanished on the night of the town's appearance. Each left behind personal items, sometimes placed deliberately, sometimes dropped mid-step. And in every case, their timepieces had stopped working. Mechanical watches froze, digital displays went blank. Cameras powered down without explanation. Flashlights refused to turn on, even with fresh batteries. The town did not tolerate measurement. This realization did not come immediately. It took decades of fragments, stories whispered in bars, notes passed between researchers, off-the-record conversations with local police to form a coherent picture. But once the pattern was recognized, it became impossible to ignore. Time failed at the threshold. Those who approached the town's edge described the same sensation: a pressure in the ears, a subtle vertigo, the feeling that seconds were stretching, thinning, slipping away unevenly. Speech became difficult, as if words took longer to reach the mouth. One man described checking his watch 3 times within what felt like a minute, only to see that over an hour had passed. Another claimed his phone showed 3 different times at once, flickering rapidly before shutting down completely. And yet, inside the town, time appeared to function normally. People walked at a natural pace. Conversations flowed without interruption. Lamps flickered in a rhythm that suggested electricity, not candlelight. Smoke rose steadily from chimneys, dispersing into the night air at a believable speed. The contradiction was unsettling. The closer you got, the more reality unraveled, until, at the very edge, it simply stopped cooperating. This boundary was invisible, but nearly everyone who approached it knew when they had reached it. The air changed. Sounds from the town, voices, footsteps, music, grew quieter, not because of distance, but because something seemed to absorb them. The warmth from the streetlights no longer spread outward, it pressed inward, heavy and unnatural, like standing too close to a furnace that gave off no heat. Some described the sensation as stepping into deep water. Others likened it to standing inside a held breath. Beyond that line, no one who entered was ever seen again, at least not as they had been. In 1978, a group of 4 university students attempted what they believed to be a controlled approach. They were aware of the rumors, but dismissed them as exaggerations. Armed with notebooks, tape recorders, and a confidence born of skepticism, they advanced together toward the first row of houses. Only 3 returned. The 4th, a young man named Daniel Reeves, stepped across the boundary ahead of the others. They watched him walk forward, turn back once and smile. One of them later recalled that he looked relieved, as though he had just solved a difficult problem. Then his watch fell from his wrist. It hit the ground, face up, stopped. Daniel did not turn around again. The remaining 3 claimed that the town seemed to close around him, not physically, but perceptually. Buildings appeared closer together. Streetlights dimmed. The sound of their own breathing grew unbearably loud. They ran. Daniel was never found. In the years that followed, the rule became stricter. Those who observed the town began to enforce it themselves. They warned newcomers. They destroyed directions. They refused to speak openly about the location, not out of secrecy, but out of guilt, because everyone who watched the town understood the temptation. It was not an aggressive pull. The town did not lure people with promises or illusions. Instead, it offered something far more dangerous: normalcy. From the outside, it looked safe, familiar, comforting, a place where nothing seemed wrong, a place where life continued, untouched by decay or consequence. And for those who had lost something, time, youth, purpose, the town felt like an answer. Witnesses described a growing urge to step forward the longer they watched. Thoughts softened, doubts faded. The mind supplied its own justifications. Just a few steps closer, just to see, just for a moment. This effect intensified near the boundary. Physiological changes were recorded among those who approached too closely. Heart rate slowed. Breathing became shallow. Pupils dilated. In one documented case, a man collapsed at the edge of the road, unconscious but alive. When he awoke hours later, the town was gone, and he had aged visibly. Gray streaks had appeared in his hair overnight. It was as if time had brushed against him. This led to a terrifying hypothesis. What if the town did not trap people? What if it consumed their time? Researchers began to suspect that entering the town did not result in immediate death, but in displacement. That those who crossed the threshold were removed from the flow of time as the outside world understood it. This theory was supported by a single, controversial account. In 2003, during an unseasonably cold autumn night, a man stumbled out of the woods near the site of the town's appearance. He was barefoot, disoriented, and screaming for help. Locals found him just before dawn. He claimed to have entered the town. He claimed to have lived there for one night. The man's name was never officially released. Medical reports described him as being in his early 40s. Dental records, however, matched a teenager who had gone missing 27 years earlier. According to his statement, the town was warm. The people were kind. He was offered food, a place to sleep. No one questioned him. No one seemed surprised by his presence. Time passed normally inside, but when the lights went out, everything changed. He described a sudden stillness, as though the town itself had paused. Then came a sensation of falling, not downward, but away. He woke up in the forest, his body aged, his memories intact, and his sense of time irreparably broken. Authorities dismissed his story as delusion. But among those who knew the rule, it confirmed their worst fears. The town did not kill you, it kept you. And when it released you, if it ever did, it returned what was left. This is why the rule is absolute. No recordings inside the town have ever been recovered. Cameras shut down at the boundary. Audio cuts to silence. Even written notes degrade, ink bleeding into the page as if exposed to years of moisture in minutes. The town does not want to be documented. It wants to be experienced. And once you experience it fully, you belong to it. By the late 2010s, the rule had become something more than superstition. It was protocol. Observers marked safe distances. They used analog equipment sparingly. They left before the urge to step forward became overwhelming. Those who ignored the rule were not mourned publicly, because acknowledging their fate meant acknowledging the truth, that the town was not a vision, not a mirage, not a ghost. It was a place where time did not behave, a place that appeared once a year to remind the world that time can be taken just as easily as it is given, and that some rules exist not to limit curiosity, but to keep you alive. Every story about the town eventually circles back to the same question. If no one who enters ever returns, then how do we know what happens inside? For decades, that question had no answer, only speculation, only fragments stitched together from fear and imagination. The rule held firm. The town appeared. People watched, some vanished, and the silence remained intact until the night someone came back. His name, at least the one recorded, was Samuel Avery. He was found just after dawn, sitting on a fallen tree near the edge of the valley where the town had stood hours earlier. He did not call for help. He did not move. He simply sat there, staring at the empty land as if expecting it to breathe again. The first thing responders noticed was his age. His identification listed him as 32 years old. The man they found looked closer to 70. His hair was white, thin, and brittle. His face was carved with deep lines, the kind formed by decades of sun, stress, and grief. His hands trembled constantly, not with fear, but with exhaustion, like a body that had been used far longer than it should have been. And yet his eyes were sharp, too sharp. They held the clarity of someone who had not lost his mind, but had seen far too much. Samuel Avery had gone missing exactly 12 hours earlier. Samuel was not a thrill seeker. He was not a researcher, nor a skeptic trying to prove a theory. He was a night shift electrical technician, called in to investigate repeated power anomalies reported near the old valley. Lights flickering, voltage drops, equipment failures that occurred on the same night every year. He was practical, methodical, bored. He arrived at the site just before midnight with a toolbox, a flashlight, and no expectation of anything unusual. According to his work log, he planned to be on site for less than an hour. At 12:06 a.m., the town appeared. Samuel later said he thought he was having a stroke. One moment, he was standing in an empty field. The next, a street stretched out in front of him, lined with buildings and glowing lamps. His radio crackled violently, then went silent. His flashlight dimmed, but did not go out. He remembered thinking that the town looked unfinished, not in structure, but in intent, as if it had been built perfectly, but for a purpose he could not yet understand. He stood at the boundary for a long time. Samuel knew nothing of the rule. No one had warned him. No rumors had reached his world of cables and transformers. He only knew that something impossible was in front of him, and that, somehow, it felt familiar. That was what frightened him most. "I felt like I had been there before," he said later. Not in memory, in instinct. When he stepped forward, time broke. Not stopped, not slowed, folded. The air thickened, and the sound of his own footsteps arrived late, as if following him rather than accompanying him. His watch vibrated violently, then went still. The second hand froze between ticks. Behind him, the field vanished. There was no moment of crossing, no sensation of entering. One step forward, and he was already inside. The town welcomed him without ceremony. A woman nodded as she passed him on the street. A child ran by laughing. Somewhere, a door closed gently. Nothing about the town suggested danger. If anything, it radiated calm. A deep, unsettling calm that soaked into his thoughts and dulled his fear. Lights glowed steadily. Power lines hummed overhead, though he could not trace where they led. Every building looked lived in, but none showed signs of age. No peeling paint, no cracked windows. Everything existed in a state of permanent maintenance. Samuel walked. He does not remember deciding to. The streets looped subtly, guiding him without force. He passed shops with names he could not quite read, written in lettering that shifted when he focused on it. He saw a cafe where people sat at tables, talking softly. Steam rose from cups that never seemed to empty. He checked the time. His watch was blank. Inside the cafe, a clock hung on the wall. It read 8:12. It never changed. Samuel asked a man at the counter what day it was. The man smiled politely, as if at a child who had asked a strange question. "It's night," he replied. That was the only answer he ever received. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, or years. Inside the town, time did not move forward. It circulated. Samuel noticed patterns. Conversations repeated, but not exactly. People aged slightly, then didn't. The same song drift from different buildings, always familiar, always just out of reach. No one slept. No one ate, though food was everywhere. No one asked him where he came from. Eventually, he realized something worse. No one left. He watched a man stand by the edge of the town, staring into the darkness beyond the last streetlight. The man stood there for what felt like days. When Samuel returned to that spot later, after walking streets that curved back onto themselves, the man was still there, unmoved, unblinking, alive. That was when Samuel understood. The town was not a place people visited. It was a place people were kept. Time inside the town did not destroy the body. It destroyed the outside. Every moment Samuel spent inside erased his connection to the world beyond. He felt it physically, memories loosening, faces fading, names becoming difficult to hold. His sense of urgency dissolved, fear softened into acceptance. That was the town's true mechanism. It did not trap you with walls. It waited until you no longer wanted to leave. The people inside were not prisoners. They were settled. Samuel began to age, not rapidly, not dramatically, just enough to notice. His hands stiffened, his back ached, his reflection in a shop window showed new lines around his eyes. Years were passing, not in sequence, but in accumulation. Time was being deposited into him. He tried to run. The town allowed it. But every street led him back to the center. Every attempt to focus his thoughts ended in fog. Panic flared, then dulled, then vanished. The town did not fight him. It simply outlasted him, until the lights went out. There was no warning. One moment, the lamps glowed. The next, darkness fell, absolute and heavy. The sound stopped. The hum of electricity vanished. Even his breathing seemed too loud, too real. The town held its breath. Then it exhaled. Samuel described the sensation as being pulled through himself, as if his body remained, but everything else, his time, his presence, his years, was being removed. He screamed. No one heard him. When he woke up, it was dawn. He was lying in the forest, miles from where he had entered. His clothes were worn thin. His hands were aged. His body felt used, like a machine that had run nonstop for decades. But he was alive. Doctors could not explain the cellular aging. His organs were those of an elderly man. His bones showed microfractures consistent with long-term stress. And yet, he remembered every detail of the night before. Every hour. Every year. Samuel Avery had spent a lifetime inside the town, and the town had given it back, all at once. He spoke only once publicly, at a closed hearing attended by officials, researchers, and one man who had seen the town from the road for over 20 years. When asked why he believed he was released, Samuel was silent for a long time. Then he said, "It didn't need me anymore." He died 6 weeks later. Natural causes. His body was cremated, his medical files sealed, his recorded testimony erased from public record, but a transcript survived. In it, Samuel offered a warning that has since been passed quietly among those who know about the town. "It's not waiting for people," he said. "It's waiting for time." The witness changed everything, because he proved the rule was real. And worse, he proved that breaking it did not mean disappearing forever. Sometimes, the town lets you go, just long enough to show the rest of us what it does to those who stay. When the town disappears, it leaves no trace behind. No broken ground, no scorched earth, no imprint where streets once stretched and windows once glowed. By morning, the valley is empty again, indistinguishable from any other forgotten place. Birds return, wind moves through the grass. The world resumes as if nothing extraordinary has occurred, but time does not. Those who have witnessed the town know that something remains, even when nothing can be seen. An absence, not of matter, but of continuity, as though a portion of the night has been removed, carefully cut away and carried elsewhere. The clocks begin to drift. Watches that once kept perfect time lose seconds, then minutes. Digital devices reset themselves to incorrect dates. Some refuse to function at all. People who stood too close to the boundary wake the next morning feeling older than they were the night before. Not dramatically, just enough to notice, just enough to wonder. Time has been touched. For years, authorities have insisted the phenomenon is nothing more than coincidence layered upon folklore. Power fluctuations explained by infrastructure decay. Disappearances attributed to poor decisions. Testimonies dismissed as stress-induced hallucinations. But coincidences do not repeat themselves with such precision. Once a year on the same night, the town returns, and each year, fewer people go looking for it. Not because they have stopped believing, but because belief has turned into restraint. Those who know the truth understand that observing the town is not harmless, that even watching from a distance carries a cost, because the town does not simply exist in time, it interacts with it. Those who witnessed Samuel Avery's return speak of the fear in his eyes, not of death, but of continuation, of knowing that the town had not finished with him, even after releasing him back into the world, as if part of him remained behind, still walking those streets, still caught in that endless night. Some believe that everyone who sees the town leaves something there, a few seconds, a memory, a year. The town does not steal violently. It takes subtly, patiently, accumulating what it needs over countless appearances. This may be why its population seems to grow, not with new people, but with borrowed time. Inside the town, tomorrow never arrives. And perhaps that is the point. The town exists in a perfect loop, an eternal presence sustained by what it absorbs from the outside world. Every year it surfaces briefly, like a wound reopening, to draw in more of what it requires to remain. Not people, time. This realization has changed how some choose to live. Locals no longer schedule important events on the night of the appearance. Hospitals report unusual staffing shortages as workers refuse night shifts. Roads near the valley are quietly closed under the pretense of maintenance. Not officially, just enough to keep most people away, because rules like this do not need enforcement. They survive through memory. Those who have seen the town rarely speak of it openly. When they do, their voices lower instinctively, as if the town might hear them, as if naming it too loudly could summon it outside its appointed hour. And perhaps it could, because the most unsettling question has never been answered. Why does the town appear at all? If it exists beyond time, why return to a world bound by it? Why allow itself to be seen, observed, remembered? One theory suggests the town is failing, that it leaks, that once a year, the boundary between its frozen moment and our moving world thins just enough for it to surface. Desperate, unstable, in need of replenishment. Another theory is far worse, that the town is not malfunctioning, that it is feeding. And like any system that feeds, it must remain visible enough to attract attention, but distant enough to preserve the illusion of choice. You may look, you may listen, you may wonder, but if you step inside, the town will take everything you have ever been and return only what remains when time is done with you. As dawn breaks on the morning after the appearance, the valley lies quiet once more. Those who were there feel an unshakable urge to leave, to put distance between themselves and the place where the town stood. They do not look back. They already know it will return. Once a year, always the same. And when it does, it will glow with warm lights and familiar sounds, pretending to be a refuge in the dark. But the town is not a shelter. It is a reminder. That time is not something we own, that it can be bent, borrowed, and broken. And that somewhere, just beyond the edge of ordinary nights, there is a place where time no longer moves forward, because it has learned how to take what it needs from those who do.
Shadows crawl where the light won't go. A silent wind, it starts to grow.